Subscribe now.
Some say into the grave.
Hello one, hello all. Welcome to another tier ranking in the music category. I come to you as always as CP, otherwise known as Charles. I'm doing my favorite band for flip a coin, and there's a 50-50 shot that this is my favorite band. We're doing Alice in Chains today, and I'm joined by Cody Leach, who I asked to join me for this, and then he finished his video first, and then I crossed the Atlantic again. So apologies for the delay and the wait. Really bad time for me as far as production is concerned. But alas, I'm just talking about music and putting them into little categories. It's gold, silver, bronze, aluminum, trash is how I got it, and it's how I'm leaving it. What we're covering is the studio albums, the EPs, and Unplugged. Unplugged, a lot of people consider that one of, if not the best Unplugged album in the MTV series from the mid-90s. And there's a song or two on there that I think aren't on any albums. So just a cheap reason to get this clip into this video. I love all grunge. I'm a big fan of Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. Obviously, those are kind of the big three when you think of grunge and popularity. People would throw Pearl Jam in there in some occasions, but they kind of got a bit more mainstream, man. There's probably others. Stone Temple Pilots. There are these. I mean, we could do tiers for the bands themselves as far as. I just brought up another idea. Alice in Chains was my favorite band. It's a band that existed before the Deftones did, and it's a different type of sound. And to me, there isn't a better singer than Lane Staley. And I think his story is absolutely tragic. And when you consider the Hollywood craze of making movies about musicians that have died too young, the Lane Staley story, in the right hands and as brutally honest as possible, would be gut-wrenching. Just absolutely gut-wrenching. The man suffered. He had an addiction. He suffered with it. I mean, they're all over the lyrics. And, people just loved his music and didn't really think about the issues that this talented man was going through. And, Anyway, here we go. First album, Facelift. Mainstream people probably know Man in the Box more than anything else by Alice in Chains. And the first 6 songs on Facelift are awesome. Like 5-star awesome. Right up until, I want to say, Love, Hate, Love. And there's a couple of songs on Facelift where the 80s is still got a bit of a hangover in there. It's not bad, but as you progress through their discography, the second half of Facelift isn't the Alice in Chains that we know. It's a band that was embracing 1990 and making music for the time while being part of a revolutionary trend out of Seattle. I would put Facelift in silver My standards are high for this band. Up next, we have Dirt, which is probably my favorite Alice in Chains album. Spoiler. That is an album I can listen to start to finish and kind of feel ripped off. It's not long enough, in my opinion. My favorite song of theirs is on this album, of course, and it's Wood. And people who say things like Kurt Cobain is a better singer than Lane Staley should listen to the isolated audio track of Lane from Wood.
To the flood again. The same old trippy words back there. So I made a big mistake. Try to see it once my way. Am I wrong? Have I run too far to get home?
There's a reason there's this trend on YouTube of professional opera singers and vocal teachers reacting to Lane Staley. I went past it, but what he does in Love, Hate, Love is quite impressive. But Dirt, you can tell that Lane was in his early tryst with the girl named Heroin. Lyrics started getting dark already in 1992. Stuff like Junkhead. Dirt is another one of my favorites. This album, again, this is an album I listen to start to finish. As far as I'm concerned, as far as an Alice in Chains fan would be concerned, Dirt is probably flawless. So therefore, I have it as a gold. Next is Jar of Flies, which probably has the most depressing song that everybody has used at some point in their tributes to Lane Staley, and that's Nutshell. This is them taking a very distant turn from Facelift, which was very heavy and full of distortion. Nutshell is the polar opposite. Very quiet, very acoustic, very, very sad. It's a sad song. This album, with the exception of Nutshell, is one of those albums. Even I Stay Away isn't my favorite. It's just a solid album. No excuses. Again, great song, just not something that I'm rushing to, but I'm not turning it off either. And again, this is an EP, so if I felt like Dirt was a bit of a time ripoff, this says Hold My Beer. I'm going to put this in silver. The next one is a bit of a cheater. This is an EP. It's Sap with 4.5 songs on it. I say 4.5 because there's 4 and a hidden track. This has got Brother, which is how I went to a band called Dark New Day. They have a song called Brother, and I thought somebody covered the Alice in Chains song. And that's not true. You can name a song Brother and not be covering Alice in Chains, my ignorant, silly head learned. Brother is an absolutely incredible song. Again, this is part of that Jar of Flies and Sap. Essentially, they came out pretty close to each other. You just put them together as the same album, and it would be more fitting. It would be an 11, 12-track regular LP. But I don't know why they did that, but maybe it has something to do with the record labels. As much as I have so much love and appreciation for record labels, I wouldn't blame them for trying to do as much as they can to get out from under their contract. I don't know what I'm talking about. Record labels are awesome. Every track on here, as far as acoustic is concerned, and with the Chris Cornell featured spot, They're all brilliant. I'm putting this in gold. Yes, the total length is 20 minutes. That is a musical comparison to having sex with yours truly. In and out. Not much to linger. It's powerful and you're sad and everything's quiet and it's over quickly. That is the innuendo for sap, like a night with Sipo. Next we have self-titled or tripod, depends on who you ask. I remember there was multiple covers. This is the first album that I learned that CD cases can come in more colors than clear. This was Alice in Chains' return to heavy distortion, and it's odd that their really heartfelt stuff didn't make much of an impact on radio when I was growing up, but it was their heavier stuff that was getting more airplay. Back in the time when we had radios, kids, and you couldn't just command the song that you wanted to hear out of thin air like a music genie. You had to pray that they were going to play something you wanted to hear. But when it came to Alice in Chains, their heavier stuff was usually getting more airplay than their acoustic stuff. And self-titled, aka Tripod, was a return to that. This is an album that I think is incredibly underrated. Well, again, we all have separate opinions, but there are a hell of a lot more songs that I enjoy a lot on this album than the average Alice in Chains fan. But Sludge Factory, again, give me another reason to use this clip.
Fuck!
Good song otherwise, and perhaps my favorite song on the album isn't even a single. This happens often with me, by the way. I usually tend to go for the stuff that you don't hear 10 times a day from everybody else. Oddly enough, my favorite song from that album is God Am. I can't express how much I am fascinated by this song, and the lyrics are they're something. They make me scratch my head and wonder. Goddamn, when I read the lyrics, I was like, I'm going to assume that they're atheists. Too many singles that got too much radio play that kind of wore me out. That tends to happen. See my previous Deftones ranking for similar type of treatment. But I'm going to put self-titled in silver. And yet another reason to use my favorite clip of Lane Staley.
Fuck!
The Alice in Chains Unplugged. It was a hell of a way for them to feature their unplugged, their acoustic side, because again, if my memory serves me correctly, their heavier stuff was getting much more airplay than their acoustic stuff. And MTV had this series where it was quite popular, quite successful at the time. I remember watching most of them. I think the most memorable one as far as the average person from that era is concerned is probably Nirvana. But to hear Alice in Chains playing some of their heavier stuff and of course some of their acoustic stuff live, and Lane, this would be his last recorded album or recorded session with the band, and you can tell he's frail looking. You could see it. His complexion isn't the greatest, but his voice was still there, and to have a live acoustic version of what at that point was Alice in Chains' greatest hits was something incredible. As much as people talk about the Nirvana Unplugged, Alice in Chains Unplugged is an absolute gold for me, start to finish. And again, they showed that they were human. They loved to have fun. That was something that if I got to see Alice in Chains where they weren't making music, they were pranksters. They liked to laugh, and I like people who like to laugh, and it's just a shame. It's just a shame. There's a single, "Get Born Again," that came out with a music box that we're not going to be ranking because the music box is essentially everything Alice in Chains recorded up until that point. And to help sell it, they released a previously unreleased track, "Get Born Again," which I quite enjoyed. I don't know where I'd put it, silver or gold, probably. That was a song I rather enjoyed. After a while, if you're counting the release of the music box, nearly a decade passed before we would have new Alice in Chains music, and that is because we lost Lane Staley in 2002. Judging by the way the band spoke about him and everybody around him, or the band spoke about him, it wasn't exactly a surprise. And I remember really disliking James Hetfield for a while, because they were supposed to tour with Metallica, and Alice in Chains were supposed to tour together, and in between songs they had played a Alice in Chains riff, and James Hetfield motioned like he was shooting up, and I believe he said, "Oh, I can't tour. And I was being a bit of a stan, bit of a simp, but they were being business people who got fucked over by Guns N' Roses years before that. Guns N' Roses kind of fucked them over. So, well, then that documentary came out, and James Hetfield certainly had some demons to deal with, and you witnessed it on camera. So I kind of let it go after that, but it didn't sit well with me. Everything about it didn't sit well with me. Every time, for years after that, Alice in Chains would pop up with a guest singer, and it was quite interesting to see the different variations of their classics that they would sing. Phil from Pantera singing "Wood," quite interesting. There's many. They had many guest spots over the course of those few years after, and like I said, I had the perfect wish pick in Brett Hessler, who you probably don't know, but
Was it me who killed the train, who compromised most everything?
would have fit the Lane sound just perfectly for me. But they didn't want to do the Journey thing. And William Duvall and Jerry Cantrell knew each other from Jerry's solo work. And in 2009, we were given Black Gives Way to Blue. And I remember they would tease the release of the album for months with the looking in view clips and sound bites and whatnot. And the song ended up being, over 7, close to 8 minutes, I think. And when they released that, I was very confident that we were going to be okay as far as Alice in Chains fans are concerned. And you listen to it, and it just feels like a leftover track from the self-titled album that somebody else is singing the Lane parts. Because the sound, a lot of people will complain and have gripes against bands that don't progress over the course of 15 years. But A Looking in View certainly sounded like something that was off their mid-90s shelf. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was 7 minutes, 6 seconds. I'm looking now, and Yeah. So we had that single before we had the actual album. And once I had my hands on the album and got to listening to it, things were different. As much as Alice in Chains certainly has a certain sound to them, there's one that they're missing. And, maybe everybody was still feeling everything around. And there's some tracks that, I'm okay with, some tracks that I enjoy. All Secrets Known is a song that I think that I enjoy a hell of a lot more than I give credit for. But A Looking in View, maybe Acid Bubble are songs that stick out to me, but the rest are kind of blurry in my memory. So I'm going to put Black Gives Way to Blue in bronze. Next, we have The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. They're coming back around is what I was thinking after this album had come out. And they're becoming a different version of Alice in Chains. Much unlike AC/DC, I think, is kind of the same band if you flip-flopped their singers. They kind of sound the same. Alice in Chains, by about the time of The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here, first of all, they're older, more mature, whatever that means. But they were kind of giving us a different version, the new version of Alice in Chains, and it was starting to stick for me. Stone is a song that I think is quite good, and the video's fucking gnarly. And they returned to that mid-90s hard rock, heavy metal music videos that creep you the fuck out. And The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here is something that is completely comfortable on Headbangers Ball and that era. That is a fucking creepy video that came out well before. Those of you who have seen Nope, if you watch the video for The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here, you'd have some sort of similarity. There's no monkey in The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here, but I was assured that they're at least agnostic. Phantom Limb is another song that I quite enjoyed. Again, if we were ranking, I would probably put Devil Put Dinosaurs Here above Black Gives Way to Blue, but it's still in that bronze category for me. Lastly, we have their most recent release, which is Rainer Frog. And I think this is modern day Alice in Chains settled. This is whatever we're going to get from Alice in Chains from here forward. This is what it's going to sound like. And this is probably the first album that completely feels like they've moved on from Lane Staley and they're their own band without him. As odd as that sounds, saying that, I realize they made 2 albums before this without Lane. Again, at moments, Black Gives Way to Blue felt like some Lane leftovers with somebody else plugged into his stuff. And The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here was, trying to figure themselves out. But Rainer Frog is a return to form, yet a coronation of what we can expect moving forward from Alice in Chains. And this is probably the first album in a very long time, well, at least a decade or 2, that I really I talk about how I judge albums. This is something that I can sit and listen to start to finish and be quite pleased. Not the One You Know is quite a ditty. The second half of the album, I think, is very, very strong. And that starts with Deaf Ears, Blind Eyes. And again, sorry I can't really play you guys clips because music labels are so nice. And even if I could help sell them an album, they don't want me to use anything. But Deaf Ears, Blind Eyes, which isn't a single. It's just a regular old school track that's buried on an album. The second half of Rain or Frog, starting with that song, is very strong in my opinion, and I am going to put it in silver. So here it is. I'm a big fan of the band. Nothing they have put out yet is what I would call bad. Bronze isn't really, it. You could call it tolerable if you want, but both of those albums in Bronze have their moments. It's just there's more moments during those two albums where I'm just kind of like, yeah, all right. It doesn't make a difference to me one way or another, which is I'm fine with it. I'm just not jumping for joy, and I don't hate it. There's nothing of theirs that I really hate. So this is a really unfair tier list. I'm dying to know yours. You guys have been asking, a number of you have been asking about this tier list. I'm curious to see what Cody's list is like, because Cody was just a little baby during the 90s when I was in school listening to Alice in Chains and watching the music videos and I actually got to watch Alice in Chains Unplugged live. How does the band play for somebody who's quite a bit younger than me? So Cody Leach, who again is doing a parallel tier list, check out his ranking down below, and feel free to put yours down below. I'm curious. I'm extremely curious to see who puts what where, because I know some people that there's no getting above Man in the Box, and I feel that's too mainstream, and that's, I don't know, maybe I'm gatekeeping Alice in Chains, and of course their sadder stuff, some people have that at the top. So incredible band. May they make, what do we have here, 9 albums? May they make 9 more. And with all due respect to William Duvall, maybe they can borrow Brett Hessler to do a Laney type tribute, just for one album, just one. Or that kid who sounds just like him, they could pull a Journey, or a Stone Temple Pilots. Any hoozle. I've been CP, otherwise known as Charles. I'd appreciate it if you enjoyed this to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more stuff like this that I don't know. I don't talk about music often, but if there's enough interest, I certainly would like to. So a sub would help both of us in that situation, and comment down below, hey, I kind of dig this stuff, and why don't you just stop talking and let the end take over? I just don't know when to stop talking is the problem.
Fuck! And yet I fight this battle alone. No one to cry to, no place to go.